All right, we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad that you are here. To the people online, to the people in the room in Texas. This session is about the Inspiring Career Development and Action curriculum that was just released about a day or so ago. Yeah, this is a ready-to-use free curriculum. It's in PDF form. It is online. It's on your Whova app, and I'm also going to be sharing the link with you directly. This curriculum was developed with funding from two main sources. Through SABES, which is the professional development system in Massachusetts. The funding was through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which through ACLS supports our adult education and our professional development resources, and through NCTN, which is part of World Education, which is where I work. So just to introduce your team today, let's see, I'm gonna move this little thing out of the way, although that's how you can see Eliana. Eliana is online and she's supporting the people online. And then I'm Danny Scher. I was the lead editor of this curriculum, and I am a technical advisor at World Education with expertise in career pathways, advising, and career coaching, IET specifically, and ILCE. And immigrant integration and internationally trained professionals. So those are all my passion areas. But today, this curriculum kind of mainly combines career pathways and advising, as well as, of course, academics, English language, ESOL, and math instruction. With me is the Program Support PD Center at SABES Director, Alexandra Papagno, and online is Eliana Stanislavski, supporting you all online, a PD specialist also with World Education and SABES. Our goals for today are up here on your screen. We're going to make sure that you know what's in the curriculum, all the topics that are covered, and how it connects to the goals you have for your state or your program or your students. We're going to give you a taste of how we do this integration by actually trying out an activity in a sample lesson, and that will help you really understand the approach we take. And then we'll ask you at the end how you can use this. So all roles are welcome here, and there is relevance regardless of if you're an administrator, a state lead, a PD provider, an instructor, or some kind of advisor, career coach, or navigator. Just a couple other things. I'm hoping that you all have a phone or a laptop with you to access the QR codes that I'm going to give and to look at the curriculum at one point in the session. If you don't worry. You can still participate verbally, especially because we're such a nice small group here. But ideally you have at least a phone to access the QR code. There are going to be 2 or 3 opportunities where you're going to be talking to each other a little bit. And this is also an informal space. I really welcome questions. We're a small enough group that we can kind of talk. If things come up, just raise your hand. I'd love to answer your questions.
Jen, could you scoot the Zoom bar down a little bit?
Absolutely. Down or up. Is that any? There's no great place for it.
That should be fine.
Okay. After we do the Menti, maybe I'll go into full screen. Okay, we'll start off by helping you understand what is in this curriculum. So the way that we're going to do this is I want to get a sense of the goals that your learners have, whether it's in your state, in your program, or in your classroom. What are the goals of your students? So for those in the room, you can access this through the QR code, or you can go to menti.com and you can enter this code. And it's going to give you 3 opportunities to answer the question, what are the goals of your students? You can enter a word or a short phrase. It does limit your characters. For the people online, I believe Eliana is going to be adding a link to the Whova chat, but you can also access it through the QR code. All right, so we see our responses coming in. Keep entering your 3 responses. All right, I'll give it another minute or so and refresh. Okay, so the point of a word cloud is you start to see in the middle the most common goals. So the biggest one that I see is better job. This is probably not surprising, and this isn't like anything new, but I want to get us all on the same page about the most common goals. So a better job, and then we show GED, right, or high school equivalency. Pretty close to that, you see learn English, get a job, high school credential. I'll add that into the GED bucket. More education, improve, hope, achieve financial stability, access to good jobs, graduate, improved quality of life, self-sufficiency. That's kind of connected, made the self-sufficiency to not just employment, but this word better that someone put in there. Talks about like a good job, a quality job, the ability to make more money. Let me just refresh one more time. All right, a couple other things here. Career ready, employment, better job, GED, high school, more education, okay. Not need a translator, so there you see English language, proficiency gains, access to good jobs, financial stability. The point of this word cloud is to show that the goals of our students kind of fall into 2 main buckets, right? Where they want access to better jobs and they want to make gains with their education, right? So improve their English language proficiency, attain a high school equivalency credential, right? Those are kind of like, broadly speaking, the 2 goals. And we have limited time with learners in our classroom. They are busy, they are working. And we have limited teaching resources. So the whole point of the ICA is to try to do both things at one time. You are helping them make English and academic gains while they are learning about careers. They're learning about what careers are in high demand. They're learning about what training you need for certain jobs. They're learning about career pathways. They're learning about all these things while they are making academic gains, maybe working towards their HSE or making English language proficiency gains. So the Inspiring Career Development in Action curriculum that is just newly published. Actually, the first edition of it was published in 2009. Does anybody remember the original ICA? All right, we have at least one person, and in the room, in the online, I'm not sure, please tell us in the chat if you remember the original ICA, which was called Integrating Career Awareness. It was very well received because educators wanted tools to do this contextualized integrated approach where they were doing careers while building students' academic skills. It was so well received that we knew it was worth it to update it in 2025 to respond to the current realities of like how the workforce has changed, how students' needs have changed. So we kept the original intention of the ICA, which is now called Inspiring Career Development in Action. We still wanted to keep the like ICA acronym, but acknowledge that working on careers is more than just like kind of career awareness. We actually are really supporting like education and career planning, setting goals, action steps in this curriculum. We wanted to help educators do that with students. The intention is the same, providing tools for educators to guide learners through a supportive, realistic career awareness, exploration, and planning process. A few things that are different. I'm just going to go into full screen here. So we won't be, sorry, folks. We can maybe, no, the Zoom bar is still there. Can't get rid of it. What is different is a couple things. We wanted to acknowledge that the workforce has changed, so we added more of an emphasis on shorter term, non-credential, like workforce training opportunities, in addition to credential, credit-based post-secondary opportunities, right? So in 2009, there was like all this emphasis on transitioning to four-year college. And now we're helping learners explore all the different options, including non-credit, shorter term workforce training options. Standards-based here, we always had an emphasis on integrating academic standards, but in this version of the ICA, we have more intentionally integrated the college and career readiness standards throughout. And we've also included, not in every lesson, but as a way to model, we've included the English language proficiency standards in certain places. Transferable skills, we've put more of an emphasis on calling out where students are gaining transferable skills that are so essential in the workplace, those employability skills. So those are mentioned in every lesson, like teamwork and communication. Students are using that here. So now educators can see very clearly in their lesson plan, oh, students are learning communication and teamwork in this lesson. And then finally, we put more of an emphasis on the fact that students are doing career exploration and planning within a workforce system that is inevitably inequitable and biased. And so we wanted to provide activities in the ICA that students could explore these realities and also give more background reading to instructors to understand the bias that exists in the workplace for so many different reasons, including students who are learning English as an additional language and may face certain kinds of bias around that, as well as racism and different forms of discrimination in the workforce. So most likely you are in this room or in this Zoom because you know that it is important to provide students with both of these things. Help them increase their skills, give them access to the career information that's going to help them make good choices. But don't just take it from our experience and our anecdotal information. But here's a few statistics that can help you kind of understand the need for this. So take a minute just to read these statistics. So what this really shows you is that students need access to training to be able to achieve good quality jobs. And yet we have almost half of all students that really also need to improve their basic skills to be able to access all these trainings, okay? And we firmly believe that students do not need to achieve a certain level of English proficiency or academic readiness before they're ready to start exploring careers, exploring better jobs. We don't think, oh, you just have to be in an entry-level job while you're working on your English. No, let's explore what's available to you, what workforce trainings you can access, and how your skills can translate into some of these other jobs. All right, before we move on to our activity, I want to make it clear that the ICA was indeed written at a certain student level. So kind of in the ballpark of NRS levels for ABE, like 2 to 4, levels 2 to 4, and for ESL levels 4 to 6. That's like roughly, and that spans a pretty wide range of students. However, you can absolutely adapt this to meet different student levels and to meet different student interests and needs. So one of the ways that you can adapt the ICA curriculum is by changing the standards level. So we've included CCRS standards at a certain level. You can have an instructor come in and modify kind of which level of standards that they're using. Same for the ELPS, the English language proficiency standards. And then I don't know if anyone's downloaded the curriculum yet, but it's about 200 pages. Okay. It is a lot of lessons that are presented to you sequentially. That does not mean you need to deliver them sequentially. You can absolutely pick and choose what's going to be important for your students. You'll use a little here, use a little there. And then if you are working with levels that would benefit from this, you can take a lesson and instead of delivering it in one session, you can kind of parse it out over like 2 to 3 classes, if that's what the learners in your program need. So there's so many ways to adapt it to meet the needs of learners in your program, as well as the interests of learners in your program.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So with that in mind, does that mean that an open enrollment model is okay for this curriculum?
Mhm.
Like, in other words, there's not builds that have to happen, so if somebody's coming in after the other's already been in for 6 weeks, that they're not going to be totally. And then just.
Yeah. Eliana, can I confirm that you heard that question online or should I repeat it?
Would you be able to repeat it for the people online?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. I mean, the question, and it was much more articulately said than this, but basically, would this work for like a rolling enrollment where students are starting at different times and they're kind of like coming in and they maybe didn't all start together? Is that kind of the gist of it? And my answer would be that there's many different ways to use the curriculum that combines maybe classroom instruction as well as advising services. So I know each program has different setup for if you have an advisor and how often students meet with them. But what I would recommend is that you pair those two things. So let's say a student comes, you've started the curriculum or your version of it. And then a student comes in, ideally you have some sort of career coach or advisor that could help fill in the gaps if they needed it, or do some sort of needs assessment to figure out what they might have missed that advisor could help like plug the holes, something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then therefore you could apply it to like a rolling enrollment kind of context. If there's any chat that like questions that people want me to respond to, just let me know, or Eliana, just unmute and shout it out.
I'll let you know, Danny. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, so now it's time to actually look at the curriculum. Some of you nodded that you've already seen that it's over 200 pages, which means that you've already looked at the curriculum. For what we're going to do right now, you're just going to look at the table of contents. It's a page and a half long, and it's like the 3rd and 4th page on the whole giant PDF. So you don't have to scroll beyond the first little section. So I would like everyone to access the curriculum right now through your phone or through your laptop. It is also on Whova if you want to access it that way. So once people have opened this, either with the QR code or the tiny URL, just raise your hand so I know that people are getting in okay. And Eliana, if you want to check online that people are able to open that PDF up.
Yeah, I
just
think
gonna
we're
look at
good. I think
All
we.
right, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so people in the room, once you've been able to open the PDF, give me a thumbs up or a hands. Yeah, awesome. Okay. All right, so now I'll tell you what we're going to do with the table of contents. And Alexandra's available if you're having trouble opening that up, just let her know. Okay, so I would like you to choose one of 3 scenarios that you see on your screen. You're going to read the scenarios and then you're going to find lessons or sections in the table of contents that you would actually use to meet that need. I'll give you a minute to read these and you can choose the one that's most like your role, or you can just choose the one that you like the most. So take a minute to read it. And choose one of these scenarios. Okay, does everyone have a scenario picked out? And Eliana, you can ask people online if they've chosen a scenario they're gonna take a look at. All right, so now you're gonna look at the table of contents and answer this question at the bottom of your screen that you can't see right now. Which sections or lessons would you use in this scenario? We'll give you 2 minutes And then you are gonna turn to someone next to you and just share what you found. All right, so I'll set the timer for 2 minutes. And then we'll turn and talk. Timer. Okay. All right, so now just find someone near you and tell them which scenario you chose and which sections or lessons of the table of contents you would use to respond to that need. So just find someone in the room. People online, please go into the Whova app and say which scenario you chose and then just tell the chat which sections and lessons you would use. We'll have 2 minutes for this as well.
Yes, it's completely on. Well, I was gonna say this. I saw you. Oh. Oh, yeah, I definitely, there's a connection.
Oh, here, I think I'm.
Okay, so which. And so.
Section 3, lessons in labor market trends.
Which. Looking at like.
Twenty more seconds.
Always something that's. Yeah, that's all they know. Yeah.
Okay, all right, my timer went off. It was quiet, but I did hear it go off. I would love to hear just one response from the room and then I'll read something or you can read something from Whova. So I'm glad you had you were finding some sections or lessons you would use. Is there someone in the room that wants to start us off? Just kind of what you found that you would use.
I chose scenario with the career advisor.
Okay.
And the section, I would choose section 1 and lesson 3, introduction to education and career planning.
Nice. Okay, so that would be relevant to this needs as a career. Are you a career advisor by any chance?
Career coach / success coach.
Perfect, exactly. I know that everyone calls it kind of something like a little different. In Massachusetts, we call it advisor, other people call it navigator, success coach. Thank you so much. What's your name?
Nathan.
Nathan. Thank you so much, Nathan. And then from Huva, you want to read a response?
Yeah, David shares, for helping learners identify jobs that align to their interests. So the first scenario, he would really like section 2, like Jennifer and Kimberly, and would start with lessons 2 and 3.
Awesome. All right, so that gives you a taste of the different topics and content that the ICA contains, right? By looking through the table of contents. Obviously, once you get into the lesson, there's a lot more detail about how you would actually do those activities. This is just kind of topics. So we are actually going to do that now. We're going to dive into a sample lesson. The one I pulled for you that I thought was just kind of represented the ICA curriculum pretty well is section 2, lesson 5. It's about transferable skills. These are obviously so important. I probably don't need to tell you why these employability skills, these transferable skills are so in demand in the workforce. So in section 2, they are understanding what the transferable skills are, which ones they have that they can talk to employers about, and better understand kind of the vocabulary of those skills, right? And how they can translate to jobs that they might be interested in. So what we're going to do now is move into an activity that you would actually do with students. So you might walk out of here today, and if you're an instructor or you are an advisor, you could actually do this activity with students, and you're going to get a taste of it right now. So what you are going to do is access the handout first of all. So I want to make sure that everyone in the room has a handout. And then online, Eliana, does everybody have access to the handout? It's also in Huva, I have to say. So you can access it that way, or you can get it in the chat. Thank you.
I just sent it around.
Thank you so much. And I think that link in the Huva app is a forced copy, so that you can take notes in there. And if you have a pen, it would be great to get that for this activity. What you're going to do, the hardest part of this activity, you're going to partner up with someone and you're going to look at them and be like, okay, you be the storyteller, I'll be the listener. So you have to choose who's going to do what. The hardest part is probably thinking of a story that you're going to tell, and you have to do it pretty quickly just because we don't have a lot of time. You're going to think of like an event or a task that you recently completed, maybe something you're proud of. So an example could be like you planned a party for somebody, or like a dinner, or maybe you started a new program, right? Or like you applied for a grant, you got a new program going. Or maybe you did a household task, like you changed a faucet, something that like seemed hard, but you did it. Okay, so those are some examples of things that you could do. It could be work related, or it could be from your personal life. It should be something you can tell in like 6 steps. You're not going to go into like excessive detail just because we don't have time. And your listener is going to just take notes on kind of what you did as you explain your story. Then the listener will just tell the storyteller what they heard. Like, let me just check this for accuracy. Is this what you did? And then I'm going to give you a little reminder, but you're going to turn to the back page of your handout and you're going to both talk about what transferable skills the storyteller used in accomplishing that task. We'll have about 12 minutes for this, which doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it historically has been enough time to do this with students. And I will remind you when you should like wrap up your story and look at the transferable skills. Questions? You can partner with the same person you just talked to, although this doesn't have to, 2 people is great, but if you want the 3rd person to be a listener, that's fine too. You can have 2 people listening. And I'll start the clock right now. Eliana, let us know if you need anything online. Oh, I'm sorry. The online people are going to listen to Alexandra.
Sure, okay.
Thanks, Danny.
Can y'all hear me okay online? Is there too much background?
There is some background noise, but we can hear you.
I would say I'm free to do stuff, but I make.
On this. That one. I'll take it outside. Yes. All right, Alexandra's gonna be your storyteller online, people, and she's gonna take the laptop outside right now to tell you the story, and you'll all be the listeners.
Thanks, Danny. Can you mute yourself while we do this?
Yes, I can.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me online okay?
Yes, we can. Thanks, Alexandra.
All right, great. So here's my story. I last year got a community garden plot and had to rebuild the fence. It's old, it was rotted, it needed to go. So to do that, I had to figure out what materials I needed, find what tools I needed, acquire those things, figure out how to use them. I also recruited a whole group of friends to come and help me out. We set a date, we figured out who was bringing lunch, very important. And we got in there and ripped up the old fence and dug a whole bunch of posts and put in the new fence. It took quite a few days, but it was really fun. We learned a lot. And now I have a brand new fence.
Thanks so much for sharing, Alexandra. I appreciate
All
that.
right.
It's a great
So
story.
in the chat, if you want to share, Eliana, are you sharing back what you heard?
Yes. So this is what I heard from you. What I heard was you had a community garden plot, but it required a new fence. So in order to do that, you had to determine what materials you needed, find tools, acquire materials and tools, learn to use those. You had to recruit your friends and organize them to help you by setting up the date, coordinating food, and then you got started by ripping up the old fence, digging posts, building the new fence, and the whole thing took many days, but now you get to enjoy your newly built fence in your community garden. Chat, let me know if I missed any details. And thank you, Julia. You definitely summarized it a lot more effectively than me. So now that we've heard Alexandra's story twice, the next question is, what transferable skills did Alexandra practice during this event? Also, thanks, David and Jennifer, for the encouragement. What transferable skills did Alexandra practice? And if you need an example of transferable skills, you can scroll to the back side of the handout, the second page. There's a list of 10 example transferable skills. I'll also paste them in the chat for us. I see collaboration from Austin. That's great. Self-management, definitely.
In the room, if you haven't done repeat back the story, move on to that, and then talk about the transferable skills, starting to talk about the transferable skills the storyteller used.
Great. I'm seeing a lot here. Communication, teamwork, leadership, and initiative, self-management. Also somebody pointing out durable skills, which I love. Communication and team building. Great. Yeah, clearly what we learned from this is that Alexandra has a whole host of valuable skills that she can employ, not just at work, but also in her personal life. So this is an interesting activity. I'm not sure. I think we can move on to the debrief. Alexandra, I'm not sure if you agree. I have some extra questions here on the handout that we can jump into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you got a lot of echo. It's okay. So the first question from our handout for debriefing is, what is valuable about doing this activity with students? What do you think about that? Take a moment to respond in the chat. activity to complete with learners? Julia said that students reflect on their own lives and then share their accomplishments with the peer group. That's great. And Jamie said celebrating what they can do. It's the opposite of the deficit mindset. Totally. David said the activity can help learners connect with each other. That's great. I also love what Jamie said. Kimberly said conversation and community building. Absolutely.
All right, we have just about 1 more minute, so if you haven't addressed the transferable skills, you can just wrap that up and then we'll come together. Thank you, online team, for starting to identify what's valuable here.
Cool. So we'll wrap up in just a moment. I see from Julia the opportunity to summarize and interact with what is shared. That's definitely a very key language skill. Practice their listening and speaking skills from Christina. Yeah, and build relationships and network. Yeah, this isn't super dissimilar from maybe a traditional networking opportunity, right? It's a nice simulation for what they might encounter at a job fair. Organizing what they are going to share before they talk. Yes, also a very key skill. Something that a lot of students I've worked with have had to focus on and improve. Thanks, Kimberly. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of different reasons why this activity will be useful. And I'm sure Danny is going to touch on it more in just a moment.
All right, so I'm starting to hear conversations just get a little quieter, so I feel like you've done the task. And I would love to hear a debrief from people in the room, and then I'll ask Eliana to share a few points of what was shared in the Hoopah chat. So we'll move into the debrief, which the first thing I'd like to hear from you is what is valuable about doing this activity with students? What would be valuable about doing this activity with students? Does someone in the room want to start us off about what they see here?
I'll start off.
Yeah.
Just the expression, getting people to express themselves, how much better or empowering you feel.
Empowering, maybe the confidence that is developed just from talking about something you did that you succeeded at. Absolutely. Eliana, could you hear that? Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. What's your name?
Galen.
Thank you, Galen. Yeah.
I just think practicing being a listener is so important and really paying attention to detail. The task is to listen so that you can repeat back.
Right. There's a little accountability there. Yeah.
And just to kind of play off of what David said too, is because when you're working with students in adult education, sometimes they come and they're so broken, they don't really realize that what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, that there's value in that. They'll come and tell you the story about how they have been, I've been taking care of my grandmother, I've been taking care, and they don't really understand the value in that is time management is involved in that, and multitasking and things like that. And when you get them to talk about it and you can begin to help them to see that there's a lot of different things in that, a lot of different things that are transferable to, to the resume or to the job, that they can really talk about in job interviews and things like that. And it does begin to build confidence and things like that. So.
Yeah. What is your name?
Lisa.
Lisa, you said so many things that are so important. Some of our students don't have an extensive formal resume of job experience, right? They might not have a lot of formal things listed, maybe just a few. But all of that informal experience you're talking about, where they're taking care of people, they have done so many things, but maybe not things that are traditionally listed on a resume. You want to help them understand how they're gaining skills through all of those experiences that are absolutely valuable. That's currency in the workforce, right? All of those transferable skills. And you also mentioned resumes and like in interviews, even to name those skills on resumes and in interviews. And you said confidence too. I mean, those are all extremely valuable things that are worth doing with students. Anyone else in the room? Yeah,
I think just one important thing that I wanted to add was in doing this activity, I think it creates a lot of community and like a lot of connection. So I know the number one thing for me, like working in my school counseling role, is I always want to create relationships with my students and connect. And I think this, just even talking right here in my fellow peer, like, hey, you know, into the music scene, jazz music, like that's something that, you know, I want to get more into the arts, but I think it's just interesting to learn about the whole person. And then to be able to build that community and connect, because that's what's gonna keep them coming back and feeling like you have that support system. That's what makes all the difference.
100%. I could not agree more. All right, I'm seeing Eliana nod online. Eliana, is there anything you wanted to add from the chat about what is valuable that people shared?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of the points that have come up in the room have also come up in the chat. Been very active. I appreciate it a lot. Something that I appreciate is that this is all about celebrating what learners can do rather than what they can't. So Jamie pointed out how this is like the opposite of the deficit mindset, and Austin built on that, adding that when students begin to see these experiences, meaning experiences in their daily lives, as meaningful, not just mundane, they're better equipped to articulate their strengths, build confidence, and apply those skills across academic, personal, and professional settings. There were a lot of other great points, but I'll keep it brief for the sake of time.
Perfect. That sounds great. Thank you so much for summarizing that. We'll move on to the second debrief question, because what is, kind of unique and innovative about this curriculum, along with some other things, is that we are also building specific and explicit academic skills, right? So in this activity, could you, I don't expect that you've memorized the CCRS AE standards like by number and letter, but are there any academic skills that you can pull out of this activity that students just would have practiced while doing that? Speaking, listening, reading, writing, you can just kind of like name any of them. You don't have to name a specific standard. Like what academic skills? You mentioned some of them. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, from listening to note taking to scanning the list on the back, there are so many.
Yep. Listening, note taking, scanning, sequencing, steps. Yep. And then if people want to respond to this question in Whova, I'll ask Eliana if there's any questions, what academic skills were being used? Any other in the room that weren't mentioned yet?
Discipline, structure.
Yeah, structure, kind of like that, following directions and like an order of like what to do next, just being the self-management and being able to follow step-by-step instructions. Anyone in the Whova chat, Eliana, that in response to academic skills, are there any answers in there?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about it earlier, actually, but just in terms of more recent answers, we talked about reflective skills, especially like metacognitive skills, like paraphrasing, collaborating. People talked about just question formation from a grammar perspective and listening comprehension and overall social skill development.
Awesome. Thank you. So there's so many, and this is the thing about integrating standards, is you could pull out so many in this one activity. We just listed one to give educators that use this curriculum a taste of what you could pull out. And so in the actual curriculum, if you turn to this page on, I think it's like 70, you'll see that we listed speaking and listening anchor 3, level B, SL3B, ask and answer questions about information from a speaker, offering appropriate elaboration and detail. Okay, that's just one of the many different skills that you mentioned here. Okay, one final question. You talked to each other about the transferable skills that were at play in the event that you did, but also you've already mentioned some of them, but you've actually mentioned quite a few of them. Are there any other transferable skills you yourself used while you were doing this activity with each other? You mentioned some of them already, but other things, you mentioned kind of listening.
Respecting differences.
Respecting differences. Yeah, you want to say a little more about how that skill came into play here?
I was on the flight and I like looking out the window, but the person that was next to me that had the window seat closed the window. I didn't say anything about it.
So you were respecting that they might have different needs or, okay, awesome. And are there other transferable skills you used while you were partnering with your, and telling your story and listening to each other? I did hear you talk about listening earlier and kind of belonging and community building. Anything else that hasn't been mentioned yet? Uh-huh.
Because even in trying to identify who's gonna be the listener, who's gonna be the storyteller, did you have something, or, you know, how do we even start, like
Yeah.
that collaboration piece?
Right, yeah. And, you know, it's what we try to communicate with students, not just that they have transferable skills from all these things they do in their home life, like taking care of a parent or whatever was mentioned before, but also when they're in the classroom setting, they're practicing and gaining these employability, transferable skills, while they're doing all these other activities. Sometimes you have learners in your classroom, actually often, I want to acknowledge this, it's really important, who are not looking for jobs, right? When you're doing this kind of career content with them, it's really worth being able to tell them very clearly all the academic skills and other transferable skills they're gaining, even if the content itself of career exploration is not of direct relevance to their goals. Anything else from Huva that you want to share, Eliana?
Nothing from Hoover right now, but thanks, Danny.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'd like to give you a little bit of time now. We'll start thinking about different ways that you can use this curriculum. We have diverse roles in the room. Some of you more administrators, some of you educators, career coaches, success coaches. I'd like you to think about different ways that you can share and use and adapt the material in this curriculum, as well as the approaches that are integral to the curriculum. We're going to again utilize Mentimeter to do this, and you'll respond to, just like we did last time for the word cloud, you will respond to, hold on, let me get this open. I'm going to change slides on the Mentimeter. And you will see in a second another QR code, and Eliana already added the link for those in Zoom. I just changed the slide, which makes me think if I go to this slide right here, you can again access the QR code and answer the questions that you will see on that Mentimeter. If someone is able to open that up successfully, just give me a thumbs up in the room.
Hey, Danny, it looks
Okay.
like it's still on the previous question for me.
Okay. Try again, Eliana, see if anything is different. Still on the same question.
Yeah.
Right, give me 1 second. Huh.
Is it the results tab as well? Results versus create, does that change?
It looks, oh, well. No? All right, let's do this. So I'm gonna go back to this slide right here. Okay, so these are the options that you had in the Mentimeter, is to choose which ones of these bullet points you are most likely to do with the ICA curriculum, okay? So I'm gonna give you again time to think, pair, share.
I
Yeah.
don't think you're sharing it.
Oh, I'm so thank you. So sorry. Let me get that back up. And then it's all gonna make more sense. Okay, here are the options that you were gonna answer in Mentimeter, but now you will just look at the 6 bullet points. You're going to think of which ones are most likely ways that you are going to share the ICA curriculum or use it directly in your instruction or your practice. So I'll give you 1 minute to identify which ones of these you're planning, hopefully, or that you could do. And then after a minute of thinking, you'll just share some of the ways that you plan to do it with a partner, and then we'll do a little bit of whole group sharing. So I'll set the timer for 1 minute. You'll think about how you can use this. Pretend you're like clicking on these in a Menti. Just use your imagination. The online that Jennifer's most likely to use 5. Okay. All right, so just again, for the final time of this session, turn to someone and tell them some ways you are most likely to use this curriculum, and just share for about 60 seconds.
So I would definitely do some more workshops for our IT program, the state. So number 2, I'm sharing it with them. And then I'll probably share this for state to let no one know. I've used that to be as a change. I mean, not as you don't have to. It's really nice size.
I was thinking multiple, teaching or advising colleagues.
Oh, no. The first one. The owls, all that people around.
Right, right. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so again, a quiet alarm, but it did go off. So I would love to hear just a few ways that you came up with that you could, or that you actually plan to use and share this curriculum. Anyone in the room want to start us off? Some things you're hoping to do, some ways you're planning to share it or use it.
You should share it.
I facilitate a statewide community practice for IETs in our state, so I'm super pumped to share it with them.
I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we meet next Thursday.
Awesome, awesome. I'm really glad that you have that kind of a captive audience and can share it with
They're
them that way.
and they're gonna learn about it. It's gonna be great.
Wonderful. Anyone else want to add on a different way you hope to use it?
I combined, number 1, sharing it with the program administrator, because she's here, my program administrator is here for our facility. And, number 4, kind of structure / impromptu, in both kind of ways, just kind of weaving it in there. But with some structure or some strategic intent,
Yeah.
to utilize it.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that. I work a lot with advisors who do more work in kind of one-on-one meetings than they do classroom instruction or advising career workshops. And we do want to emphasize that there's so many ways that you could use some of the tools and the topics in this curriculum, even in a kind of more one-on-one setting, to provide structure, exactly as you said, to something that sometimes feels a little more like reactive or responsive, instead of like kind of making sure people are exposed to specific career content in your advising meetings. You could use this or like the table of contents as like a kind of a checklist to be like, which things are going to be relevant to this learner sitting in front of me in my advising meeting. Anything else that hasn't been mentioned yet in the room? Eliana, any chats in Whova about ways people plan to use this?
People are planning to do almost all the different items that are listed, although a lot of people are interested in creating a program-wide approach and sharing through professional development.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. So on the note of a program-wide approach, I did want to mention two important considerations for using this curriculum. So program-wide, Eliana just said it. You know, ideally the curriculum could be used to help the whole program kind of plan out how career exploration and planning can be integrated, right, at different levels and within both instruction and career advising. With program leadership, and I heard you mention, I'm going to share this with my program leadership because they're really important in helping make program-wide kind of changes. The staff can come together, they can look at the topics and identify where and how they could address these topics in classrooms, advising workshops, or one-on-one advising sessions. Another thing that's kind of new and incredibly important about this approach is that it asks your career advisors and coaches to collaborate with your instructors. Like, I can't really overemphasize how important this is and how some people are doing it well. But I want to say anecdotally, the majority of programs don't have explicit time to collaborate from teachers to your career coaches and advisors. And what a missed opportunity for so many reasons, right? You then have instructors that aren't informed of the career goals and trajectories and interests of the students, and you have advisors that don't really understand the language and learning levels of the student, and there's a disconnect happening there. So we do really support teacher and advisor collaboration with this. And some examples of that, you know, there's so many ways that you can collaborate between teachers and advisors, but one way is, you know, ELA instructors can team up with digital literacy instructors to support the use of online career exploration platforms, or something like instructors can use a series of lessons to help learners research career opportunities. And the career coach can then schedule one-on-one meetings or small group appointments to facilitate things that are more individual, like self-assessments with students, or goal setting and education and career planning. Right, so you're kind of marrying those two things of classroom instruction and one-on-one advising time. All right, so we have the ways that you're planning to use this. I want to close us out with just a couple key points and see if there's any remaining questions online or in the room. Here's the different things we're hoping you kind of go forth and do. The first is we do hope that you find ways to incorporate and use or adapt the curriculum in your instruction. You can start right away. This is free. It's available online. You can reach out to us at World Education and Sabes to get any kind of professional development support that might be important for your state or your program in integrating and using the ICA curriculum. Not just the curriculum itself, but the whole approach we've been talking about in this room today. And then, as we discussed, please share it with your state and your program and your colleagues. I'd love to take any questions. We do have a couple minutes left. If there are any questions in the room or on Zoom, I'd love to know them. Additionally, if you have any things that come up about like potential barriers in using this, you're like, this sounds great, I'd love to use it. I'm concerned that this might come up, like something might come up in me actually being able to use this in the way that I had planned to. So if there's anything in the room that, any questions people have or concerns you have about using it in the way that you plan. And for people online, let us know the same, any questions that you have or any concerns you have about using it in the way that you hope right now that you're inspired. Yeah, go ahead.
Question. So I was looking at that, the lesson 5 that we just went through in that second unit. I noticed that there was like a personality assessment or like a skills assessment that they could do. Are the links that are included like that for free resources or?
Yes,
Okay.
that's a great question. We only included free resources. I can't remember if there's any instances where you might need to create an account for something to access the assessment, but nothing is behind a paywall. So for the lesson you're talking about, we included a link that is section 2, lesson 5. And what I want to show right now, just because we have a second to do so, is just where you found that information. I'd love to just show everyone else. So I'm going to open this up. Every single lesson begins with an introduction. And let me show you the way that I like to get to that lesson. So we're talking about section 2, lesson 5. I'm going to click on that link. I don't have to scroll through literally 7 pages. I'm just going to click right there and get to the lesson we were looking at, things I have done. What's your name?
Clarissa.
What Clarissa was talking about is, what you'll see here is like an introduction to the lesson goal, the key terms, the CCRS standards that we talked about, the English language proficiency standards, those transferable skills, and then learner material. I think this is what you were talking about. In here, we've included anything that is being used in those activities. So there's, many of you might be familiar with the ONET online interest profiler. I believe that's the one that this would take you to. So anything learners will need will be in this section right here, learner material. Anything instructors might need to prepare, including some background reading that might be helpful to them. There's not a lot in this particular lesson, but that would be listed right here. The last thing that I didn't mention is that every single lesson includes some extension activities. Let's say you have learners who are super self-directed, or you want to do additional activities with them, or they're going into like tutoring and you're like, how can you supplement the lesson you just did? You can scroll down to extension activities for this lesson and have the tutor or have the student in a self-directed way complete those extension activities down there. So yeah, they're all free. If we link to anything. So these are My Skills, My Future and ONET, and those are all kind of highly popular career exploration sites. Any other questions in the room? Yeah.
I know that you mentioned, you could take a lesson and teach it all at once, or you could do several lessons, or you could like break it out, but assuming that you were adopting this as like an actual curriculum, what is the estimated kind of length of time that you would want per lesson, and also like maybe number of weeks to get through everything?
It's a great question, and I think it might depend at the speed at which your learners, get through the content. You can make it work to fit within the time. If you want to run the whole thing, it also depends on how much class time that you have with students, right? Obviously. I think it is designed to run throughout an academic year. However, if you have a really intensive time with students, you have a lot of time to do this, you could do it in a semester. But let's say you have a semester and you want to work with what you have, you just pick and choose the content that is going to fit the time that you have available and choose it based on relevance and interest, right? Like what are the lessons and even the sections of the lessons that are going to be most interesting and meet the needs of my students, and then kind of let everything else go. I mean, as I said, it's like 207 pages, so that's a lot. It's a lot, so I'd say choose in response to learner interest and needs.
And is there a recommended amount of time per lesson?
Yeah, this is a great question, thank you. They're all designed to kind of fit within a roughly 1.5 to 2 hour class time. And if you don't have that time, you just pick which activities to let go by the wayside. Other questions in the room? Wonderful, and I see, I don't see any questions online, Eliana, is that correct?
That's correct, Danny, but some folks wanted to express their appreciation for the session.
Well, thank you so much. I want to also thank Alexandra and Aliana for helping me run this hybrid session. It does truly take a team to run a hybrid session. Like, this is not something you could do alone. And I even have an owl. This is the only room in the entire conference, apparently, that for some reason has an owl. I don't know why. But great. So I want to thank my support co-presenters, as well as everyone in the room and everyone online for participating and engaging in these activities. I hope you find this curriculum useful.
Thank you.